Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld from Military Times. Today, we discuss a recent story between Army Times, ProPublica, and the Texas Tribune. An extensive review of Army criminal cases involving violent crimes discovered that the service is increasingly discharging soldiers in lieu of prosecuting some sexual assault cases. I spoke with Army Times' Davis Winke and two of the folks he worked with from ProPublica, Viana Davila and Lexi Churchill, about their work on this piece. Well, Davis, would you mind giving us a 30-second premise of your story?
Yeah, this was a first-of-its-kind data analysis of Army court-martial records dating back decades that allowed us to reveal for the first time that the Army is increasingly using administrative separations, or just discharges, in lieu of taking people charged with violent crimes to court-martial. It's a concerning trend, and it's one that we tried to dig into as part of this story.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'd love to ask maybe you, Lexi, sort of where this idea came from and why you specifically focused on the Army.
Yeah, definitely. So the idea started with our data reporter on the project, Ren Larson, who is absolutely wonderful and was very observant, and noticed as she was parsing through the Army Courts Martial database that we have, which shows cases, as Davis suggested, going back to 1989 that reached arraignment, that there was this weird outcome for a lot of the cases that she kept seeing called administrative separation in lieu of trial. And she just kept noticing it, and it kept coming up enough that she was like, we need to look into that a little bit more. And once we sort of figured out what it entailed, which is essentially that, as Davis said, folks are leaving that have already been charged, and in some cases are pretty far down the line towards going to trial for these violent crimes, and they simply leave with an other than honorable discharge. We thought that was definitely worth a greater look.
Davis, I'll jump back to you. I'm hoping we can break down the basics of what you touch on in your story, which is the different perspectives as to why there are soldiers that are being released on administrative leave as opposed to going through this court-martial process. Why do you see there are those that are in favor of that versus continuing each or any of these cases through trial?
From the accused perspective, if you are about to get rung up and become a felon and have a federal criminal record, or, face lengthy confinement or something like that, these discharges are really appealing. If the main trade-off is that you receive an other than honorable discharge and lose access to certain VA benefits, that's a rather small price to pay if you think you're at serious risk of doing hard time for something. And on the other side of this coin, you've got prosecutors who in some cases may realize as they're getting closer to trial that a case isn't as strong as they thought it was. Or maybe a judge rules that certain evidence is inadmissible. Or maybe you just find things that the investigators missed. There have been systemic problems with the Army's Criminal Investigation Division in recent years that sparked major reforms. For prosecutors, this is a way to, if a case might not win at trial, get this person out of your formation with a bad paper discharge. And so they see it as a way to ensure good order and discipline within the ranks. But on the other hand, there's no public record after these separations happen, other than, limited access databases and things that can be reached via background checks. You just don't know whether somebody has been discharged in this manner and what charges led to that discharge, unless you know exactly where to look. And in the course of our reporting, we found people who were very close to individuals who were discharged in lieu of court-martial, who had no idea why it had happened.
Now, I want to, as we wrap up, ask each of you what surprised you the most about this reporting, and also what some of the key takeaways are for our listeners, for your readers, that they should be, of course, leaving from a story like this. So, Viana, I'll jump to you first.
it's surprising to learn, as someone who has not had sort of personal experience with the military, how complicated the military justice system is. And even though it shares many characteristics with the civilian system, there are so many different avenues a case can go that never even make it to charging, that never make it to court, and that it is so hidden from public view that's concerning, because citizens who may not be in the military can still be affected by the military justice system, as we see time and time again. And so that, is always sort of sobering to learn.
Lexi, the same question to you. What surprised you the most, and also what are some key takeaways you think listeners and readers should have?
In the military, unless someone is convicted, you cannot get their court records, which is so different from how it works in the civilian system, where once a case starts, you are typically able to get records as they go. But unless a case is, being covered very heavily or is of public interest, there's few exceptions. You will not be able to get court records in a case that is ongoing, in a case that is discharged in this way or dismissed, or that someone is acquitted. And that is so jarring, because so many of the legal experts that we've spoken to have said cases that end this way, cases that someone is acquitted, can be just as valuable to see how the military justice system works and what the steps were that led to that.
Now, Davis, over to you. Anything that surprised you and some key takeaways?
For me, the most surprising thing was the least surprising thing about it, which was just how much everyone affiliated with the military who we spoke with for this story just accepted this as the way that it is. And were saying, yes, sure, the GAO said 50 plus years ago that these need to be eliminated, but they're here now, and they're used, and they serve a purpose, and they help us keep from being overwhelmed by cases. They help keep us from losing bad cases and having to send, people who were charged with bad things back into our formations. It was a fascinating case study to me in the law of unintended consequences, where you cannot predict the way that a tool is going to evolve to be used over time based on the changing needs and composition of the military, of the JAG Corps, and of the military justice system. And it's this kind of bureaucratic inertness that is what led the military justice system to become so mired in its own blind spots in the manner that lawmakers argue necessitated the ongoing reforms that we see.
Thank you all very much for making time for this. An incredibly interesting story. I hope our listeners and viewers take a lot away from this. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can listen to this conversation in full in the Early Bird Brief podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Stay tuned for more Defense News Weekly.